The scene with Rover and Linné riding the motorbike might be the best region introduction I have seen in any gacha game. Kuro Games has shown us that they have put great importance to the presentation of the game and made sure that they utilized all of their tools to offer players a cinematic experience like no other. There is no dialogue in this scene, there are just two characters riding a motorbike. Yet that single scene tells us more about Lahai Roi than other games could have told us in a 15 minutes dialogue scene. What a great intro! Yet Lahai Roi is not without flaws. Lahai Roi is a technical and artistic masterpiece with incredible world design and exploration, but unfortunately its narrative structure holds it back from reaching its full potential. In this video we'll dive deeper into some aspects like story, characters, exploration, world design, combat, events and optimization in order to see if Lahai Roi truly has lived up to the hype. I feel like if there's one aspect that was heavily criticized in 3.0, that is the story. I even made a video expressing my dissatisfaction with it a few weeks ago. Kuro is very inconsistent when it comes to the integration of character quests into the main story. Sometimes they do an incredible job at aligning both the character's story and the MSQ without making them feel removed from one another. 2.2, 2.5 and even 2.7 are all perfect examples in this sense. While other times it feels like the MSQ often takes a pause for Rover to go and solve whatever issues and trauma the character of the patch must overcome. This is especially prevalent in the first half of 3.0 with Linné. One of the main issues with WuWa's story is the banner character problem. Instead of an ensemble cast working together, each story focuses heavily on whoever is being released that patch. Linné in the first half and Mornie in the second half in this case. This goes against one of the main expectations people have from a main story quest of a new region. People want to learn more about the region, culture, lore, and see Rover together with the main cast come together to solve an issue that is relevant to the region itself. But instead, WuWa is presenting us with a very isolated story that has little to no relevance to the overall plot of the region. Characters feel like a device meant to sell you their banner, and players are ultimately left unsatisfied with the story overall. And don't get me wrong, not every main story quest feels like this. Like I said, Kuro did a great job at integrating the character quests into the main story in the past. But sometimes they just don't hit the mark, and this is very evident in Lahai Roi. The idea of characters interacting with one another is also heavily discussed in the community. Some people want to see the cast interact more, while others are content with the Rover glaze and consider any interactions between a character and another character that isn't Rover irrelevant. And while I understand that some people just want to self-insert and collect their wife, I think that it's perfectly valid for others to expect more from the story. The argument that there is a target audience isn't valid here. Having a target audience doesn't excuse a bad story. And the way many gacha games go about the self-insert MC glaze and the lack of interaction between the cast is just bad storytelling. Jessica Brody discusses in her storytelling book, Save the Cat, Write a Novel, the importance of team dynamics and how characters need to interact and bounce off each other to create memorable moments. A story centered around a single MC being glazed by everybody is just not interesting. It's just a device to lure lonely people into spending money on the next banner. And I find the fact that some people accept this or even defend this reality very sad. Another issue is the split release of the two story acts. A good story, especially in the beginning, needs to have a good narrative flow. In my opinion, Mornie's story was much better integrated into the flow of the main story than Linné's. Her ambition to launch Helios, the artificial sun, and usher Lahai Roi into a new era aligns perfectly with the progression of the main plot, retrieving the Exostrider's core to finally be able to awaken it. Her goal moves the plot forward. It doesn't pause it. Linnea's story, on the other hand, had us hunting random Frexidus members and fight the Void Worm, things that neither moved the plot forward nor served any kind of meaningful narrative progression that isn't tied to Linnea herself. And do not get me wrong, I like Linnea and her story, but her story should have been a separate quest based on how they constructed it. If this was a separate character story, I wouldn't have any issue with it. Robert McKee emphasizes in his book, Story, the importance of pacing and momentum. A story is not a series of events, but a unified whole that builds to a climax. When a character comes in and moves the momentum of the story in a direction that isn't related to the pre-established conflict, it feels like an interruption rather than something earned. Players want to see the regional conflict, the cast of characters interacting with each other, and a journey where all characters contribute to solving the central problem. WuWa instead delivers very isolated character-focused episodes that only converge at the end of the version cycle, like Rinascitas 2.7 finale. This creates an artificial feeling. Characters come and go without meaningful interactions. And even then, while I think that Mornia's story was a lot better integrated into the main story than Linnea's, that doesn't mean that it was perfect. My main issue with Act 2 is that the story rushes over some very fascinating pieces of lore, like the Roi tribe and their connection with the Exostrider, the Soliskin and the Academy's overall inner workings. The Heliodic Six are literally the most important people in the Roi tribe. The potential and lore for these characters was immense, yet I feel like the writers not only rushed past their part, but also wasted their potential. Brandon Sanderson, a great fantasy and science fiction American writer, often states in his lectures that great stories take time to explore their world's unique elements before racing to the climax. You cannot just breeze past these things. I feel like this quest should have been longer and prioritize regional lore together with Mornia's story. In this sense, I like the introduction to Rinascita a lot more. Rinascita followed a similar release for its 2.0 main story in the sense that we got the prologue to 2.0 and the first two acts of the main story. However, I think that it executed upon introducing us to the lore and the world building of the region a lot better. While yes, Act 1 focused heavily on Carlotta and Act 2 added the troop of fools into the mix, the story worked to weave together the characters and the main plot of the region in a much better way. We got to know the characters, understand the lore of the region, and work towards a goal that involved the entire region, not just one character in particular. And this was possible because we still had character quests to explore the characters later, so the main story could focus on being, well, a main story. I feel like Kuro should either adapt the stories properly to the new format, like I said in my previous video, or if they just cannot do that, bring back the character quests and do what you did at the beginning of Rinascita. Oh boy, and don't get me started on the Chisa problem. 2.8 focused almost entirely on Chisa. We got introduced to her story and she got established clearly as someone meant to serve as a bridge between the 2.0 and 2.3 stories. She knew that Rover was a student at Startorch Academy in the past and her goals perfectly align with our next move, going to Startorch Academy. At the end of 2.8's quest, the story sets her up to reunite with her family there by having her hear a broadcast of her mother on the radio. This actively changes her trajectory since she initially wanted to go home and return to the academy after. But after she hears the broadcast, she decides to travel with us to the academy. This was what we call foreshadowing. It's a technique where a writer sets up a future event to create anticipation. The player expects a payoff for this kind of setup, otherwise why bring it up in the first place? Unfortunately, WuWa failed to deliver on this aspect since the reunion between Chisa and her mother was completely off-screen. The principle of Chekhov's gun says the following: if you show a gun in Act 1, it must go off by Act 3. If you take time to establish a character's goal, you must deliver on it. Or you've wasted the audience's time and emotional investment. At this point, Chisa might as well went home and reunite with her family there. There was no reason for her to be at the academy. She plays no role in the current story, and the payoff of her reunion was off-screen. John Truby discusses in his book The Anatomy of the Story the importance of setup and payoff in creating satisfying narrative arcs. You cannot set up an event like this and not deliver upon it. And my final issue with the 3.0 story is how Kuro utilizes the Fraxidus. I mean, to be honest, this isn't really a 3.0 issue, but more so a problem I had through the entire story of the game. The Fraxidus feel more like a plot device employed when we need generic bad guys rather than compelling antagonists. Sure, we have some standout individuals like Frolova and Cristoforo and Scar, who are interesting and compelling characters, but outside those characters, the organization feels cartoonishly evil. The grunts especially lack nuance. They are evil because they need to be evil and because we need some bad guys. For once, I would like to see another antagonist other than the regional Threnodrian and the Fraxidus. Overall, I think that the lore and world building of Lahai Roi are excellent, but the execution leaves much to be desired. Kuro still hasn't found the right balance between character quests and the main regional narrative, but even though I have my complaints, I enjoyed going through the story. I really liked the new cast. Each character feels unique, with likable personalities and compelling backstories. They don't feel forced to fit the setting. And while we didn't meet all the characters that were teased, the ones that we did left an overall positive impression on me. Like I said, my only big problem with them is how Kuro integrated them in the story, not their story itself. I love Linnaea, I think she has an interesting background and her character is a lot more complex than you could tell at a first glance. Unfortunately, I feel like Kuro didn't utilize her very well in the main story, and that sucks. The characters feel like they exist in isolation rather than an ensemble. Characters introduced in one act mostly disappear during another act and the focus shifts towards the banner character. I want to see them interact between them more, not just with Rover. I want to see them as a cast of characters rather than a glorified ad and MC glazing machine. When it comes to the gameplay, I feel like the new characters are excellent. I love their kits, especially Linnaea's. It's fun roller skating around. Kuro was always good at making fun character kits. Overall, I love the characters individually, I just wish they had more ensemble moments and active roles in the regional story. The exploration and world design are, without a shred of doubt, the best part of Lahai Roi. First, let's talk about the aesthetics of the region. I did not think I would like Lahai Roi as much as I did. I loved how Rinascita looked. I am a big fan of fantasy designs, and knowing that Lahai Roi is supposed to lean more into the sci-fi and futuristic aspect, I was a bit skeptical that I would love it as much. But again, Kuro went beyond my expectations and created a world that masterfully blends futuristic designs like mechs, vehicles, and other massive mechanical constructions with some indigenous/natural elements like the Roya tribe's settlement. The seamless integration of the mechanical and organic reminds me a lot of Horizon Zero Dawn. For me, it's without a doubt the prettiest area in the game. Now, let's talk a bit about the motorbike. I saw a lot of different opinions when it comes to it. Some people complain that the controls are clunky and that the motorbike doesn't feel as good as flying, while others, myself included, loved every aspect of it. To me, the motorbike feels amazing. It's responsive, fast enough to feel like you're moving at a satisfying speed, and I feel a lot more immersed in the exploration aspect. It's the perfect middle ground between the exploration of 1.0 that felt very slow and traditional, and 2.0, which was a lot of fun but kinda trivialized the sense of exploration. The motorbike maintains a good sense of exploration without making it feel like a slog. Also, I love all the visual customization features and the radio. Lahai Roi feels a lot more alive simply because I took my time to explore it step by step rather than just flying from checkpoint to checkpoint like I did in Rinascita. Another highlight for me were the side quests. I loved the exploration mission where we had to restore the road network system. I never played Death Stranding, but I saw a lot of people comparing it to it. But I'm a sucker for quests where we have a real impact over the game's environment. It creates agency and makes you feel like you're genuinely contributing to the world. The NPCs also had some very good designs. Some standouts are Arsenio, Peep 2.0 and Dalifa. Please Kuro, make her playable, please. The side quests really made the world feel more alive and immersive, from going around and exploring campus ghost stories to granting a dying robot some last memorable moments before its battery runs out. Exploration and world design is truly where Lahai Roi shines for me. Absolutely phenomenal, best part of the new update hands down, and I cannot wait to see what Kuro's cooking up next in this department. First, let's talk about the tune break system. It's alright, a new mechanic that adds another layer to the combat. Nothing groundbreaking, but I see it as a welcome addition that makes combat more engaging. WuWa's combat, I think, needed something like this. While it can be a bit hard to understand at first, once you figure it out, you'll realize it's nothing really complicated. Now, the new endgame, double pawn metrics, is fine. I like the idea behind it. Instead of the run being over when we lose or the timer runs out, you can continue with a new team. Not the biggest fan of the timer aspect. I hope that Kuro would let us fight until our team dies and progressively make the enemy stronger, but it is what it is. I am not really focused on the combat aspect of the game, so I am sure that other content creators who are more specialized in this can give you a better analysis on this. I can only tell you my first opinions, which were alright. Oh, and let's talk about peak of prestige. What the fuck, Kuro? Who designed this? Well, in 2.4 this event was fun, allowing players to experiment with a very large diversity of decks. This time was literally hell on earth. The NPCs had overtuned decks, executing crazy combos that make creative deck building literally impossible. In the end, I was forced to make a cheese deck just to blow past them and get the rewards. It was not fun for me, please tune it down, Kuro. Optimization was always an issue for WuWa. What I have noticed in my case was that Lahai Roi was extremely demanding on my RAM. On my previous PC, I had 16 gigs of RAM, and my system couldn't handle it. It was literally lagging like hell. The game was literally unplayable in some moments, especially in the academy area. After I got a new PC, and to note, I didn't get a new PC for WuWa to play 3.0, no, that would be stupid. It just so happened that while 3.0 was one, I happened to upgrade my PC. But the experience was buttery smooth. The game ran perfectly at the highest possible settings. Usually on my old setup, I could run the game fine and I could even play it with some Chrome tabs open on the other monitor. But after Lahai Roi, I needed to close Chrome every time I played the game, and even that wasn't enough to make it buttery smooth. From what I saw other people saying online, it seems like the game wasn't really well optimized for lower end devices, because like I said, once I upgraded, I had absolutely zero issues. but the devs already addressed this in the 3.1 livestream and announced further optimization, which is good. I think that Lahai Roi excels in every aspect except story, which is a shame. The world design and exploration are phenomenal, and character designs and gameplay are excellent. The presentation and storytelling are top tier, and the side content and world activities are engaging and meaningful. Unfortunately, when it comes to the story, Kuro hasn't found the right balance between character quests and MSQ. Right now, the Lahai Roi main story quest feels like a character story quest marketed as an MSQ. I also think that they should stop with the split release of the main story. Anyway, Lahai Roi is a region with incredible heights, exploration, world design held back by narrative and structural issues. Hey, Homo from the future here. So, this video was supposed to come out before 3.1's release. But I changed my editing software, so I ended up spending a lot more time learning the new software than I thought. So, here we are. So I decided that instead of making a new video altogether for 3.1, I decided to add my impressions of it on top of this one. Has 3.1 saved Lahai Roi's story? Yesn't. Hear me out. I think that 3.1's MSQ is easily the best story quest in Wuthering Waves right now, rivaling 2.5 for me. I think it was an incredible quest, it's exactly what I want to see from an MSQ, although I expected it to be this way. Since Lahai Roi doesn't have a sentinel, the Exostrider was set up as a sentinel replacement for the region. We learn in this patch that Exostriders are basically Uber drivers for the Sentinels. Their main job is to transport Sentinels around different worlds. In the case of the Exostrider that we see in Lahai Roi, we learn that it was attacked by LF1 and through Aemeath's sacrifice, it was able to protect Solaris and prevent LF1 from coming to this world. So while it's not a sentinel, it's set up to serve a similar purpose, and it's tied to the history of the region in a very similar way a sentinel is tied to their region. So from a narrative perspective, I think it's safe to assume that we can call the Exostrider the equivalent of a sentinel for Lahai Roi. Aemeath, being the Exostrider's resonator, serves a similar role to Jinshi and Cartwheel. Her story, just like in previous cases, is very tied to the region itself, so I expected this story quest to be good based on my previous experience involving Sentinel resonators. But Kuro really went one step further with this one. This is everything I want from an MSQ. It progressed the main regional conflict and we got more development for Rover. For the second time since Prolova's quest in 2.5, Rover didn't feel just like an empty shell whose purpose is to save the day and be glazed by the characters, but like an actual character who is part of the world. Not only that, but we also get more lore revolving the Lament, the Sentinels and other civilizations. The quest is still mostly focused on Rover and Aemeath, but I think that in this case it actually works, because the two have a very close and a special relationship. Also, now we have an even more clearer goal, to defeat LF1 and save Aemeath. Great quest. Kuro, please keep doing this type of quest. Not to mention that the cinematography, the music and every other aspect of the storytelling were incredible as always. Now, does this excuse the 3.0 quest? No, not really. I still think that the criticism for 3.0 is valid. Kuro has been extremely inconsistent with the story through the entire life cycle of Wuthering Waves. Sometimes they push out bangers like 2.2, 2.5, 2.7 and now 3.1. And other times, well, let's say they really miss the mark, like 2.6, 2.8 and 3.0. Even if the story quests tell an overall story together, they must also function as single units. That's how good writing works. And despite how much I liked 3.1, I still feel like all the criticism towards 3.0 I had in this video is still valid. Regarding other aspects of the version, my opinion didn't change that much from 3.0. One slight downgrade is the exploration in my opinion. I enjoyed the underground area we got in 3.0 a lot more from a side quest perspective. The Frostlands, while they look beautiful, they feel kinda empty and the side quests were lackluster compared to what we got last patch. And one very weird thing is that there are a lot of interesting things to do on the map, like you can go on entire side quest with bandits, learn more about their internal politics and see how they are trying to build a giant ice throne, or go around excavating space debris and mammoths with a bunch of researchers, but they are not marked as quests. You must discover them on the map, and sometimes you must be in a very specific place that I feel like people might miss if they don't really use a guide. I don't know why Kuro didn't make this into actual side quest. Now, please excuse me, I gotta go save my daughter. Aemeath, I'm coming! All in all, I enjoyed playing through it despite the story problem. If you like this video, subscribe for more and let me know what do you think about Lahai Roi and 3.0 in general. Did it live up to the hype? Has it met your expectations? Leave a comment below. Until next time, take care.